Last night we talked about hearing God, hearing Him call you, hearing Him call your name. And before we could talk about God's purposes in the world, before we could talk about being sent into the world, we first have to recognize that you have to be called before you're sent. But God does call for a purpose. He does call people for a reason. God calls to send. If you keep the story going of Samuel, God calls Samuel by name in order to give him a word to deliver to Eli. God calls Isaiah by name. He says, if you remember that scripture in 49 that I shared with you last night, he says, He has called me by my name. Before I was born, He spoke my name. And then he says, and He has made my mouth like a sharpened sword. He has made me a polished arrow. This is what God says about Him. This is my servant in whom I will display my splendor. God calls us to Himself because He wants to do something through us, because He wants to display His splendor in us, in the world. God called Simon by name, and even in that day, on that day that He called Simon, He said, I'm going to make you a fisher of men. I'm going to turn your life into something that matters more than what you're doing right now. I'm going to take that root DNA of who you are as a fisherman, and I'm going to make it significant in the world. When God called Zacchaeus, He called Zacchaeus by name, and then He gave him the purpose of bringing justice to the village that he had cheated. Every time God calls someone, He calls them to send them. Every time He calls us to Himself, it is to give us an assignment to send us out. And here's the thing that this is my contribution tonight to your thinking about calling and sending. Often, when God calls us and then sends us, the thing He sends us to has something to do with the injustice we see in the world. Something we see that's wrong is a way in which God is calling us and then sending us. I have 4 boys. I left them all home because I have 4 boys. And that's too many boys. That's too many for any one household to endure, to suffer. And they fight and tackle each other. And there's a kind of pecking order in my boys. And I think the girls, for the most part, are out of this this sort of system of injustice. But there is this sort of order, this hierarchy. Noah picks on Luke, Luke picks on Simeon, Simeon picks on Skylar. And Skylar, he's the baby, so he doesn't really have anyone to pick on. And that builds up in a person. It's like that sense of injustice just builds up inside him. And so one day, Noah, and you have to understand, we all get that it starts with Noah. We all know it's his fault. We all know that he's really the progenitor of the injustice in the house. It really is his fault. And so all the kids, in a way, have this thing towards Noah. And he's an incredible kid. He really is. But he starts it. He's always the one starting it. And they know that. He's the oldest. They know that he's 15. Is he 15? JL? How old is the kid? Yes, that's a thumbs up over there from the. So he's 15, and he just, he can't control himself. He's overrun with testosterone. He just literally can't control himself. Well, one day, Skylar, he's the 3, is he 4? How old is he? He's 3, thank you for that. He's 3. The 3-year-old, he sees his moment. So we have this loft in the kids' room, and Noah's eating a sandwich on the bottom, on the floor, on the loft, and Skylar sees this chance. He gets up on the loft, looks down, sees Noah below him. I'm sorry, this happened. Whips his thing out and takes a leak on Noah's head. He's eating a sandwich. What is that? Is it raining in here? What is that? I got to be honest with you. Noah comes running, and he's like, crying foul. And I'm going to tell you, what do you think I did? I cracked up laughing, like broke a stitch, like on the ground in joyful jubilation. I didn't have a problem with it. You know what I mean? I just didn't have a problem with it. Every Christian has been called by God. Every Christian has heard Jesus whisper their name. And they've come, and to some degree, by faith, they've come to that call. They've answered that call. But not every Christian does what's next. Not every Christian obeys the next word they hear. And always there is a word. Always there is a sending. There's that moment where we stand before God, present ourselves. He's called us, Melissa. And we come. And we stand and we say, Lord, I'm here. Speak, your servant is listening. And then he speaks and says something to us. And this is where we have a breakdown. This is where your life changes. This is where a new kind of Christianity is forged, which says, yeah, I'm saved but not sent. I want to receive the gifts of God but not distribute those gifts to the world that he loves. And it just isn't right. It isn't biblical. You want to understand God's purposes in the world? That's what you want to know. That's what you want to understand. You cannot understand his purposes in the world until you've understood his purpose for you. Until you've heard him speak and whisper in your ear someone else's name that you're supposed to love and lead and even die for. You want to love his purposes in the world? You must love the people that he's put in your life to love. The people that he sent you to. If you can't answer the question who you're sent to, you cannot be a fulfillment of the Great Commission. The majority of the gospel story, the majority of the call of Jesus upon a disciple, you cannot do. You're a fraud. There is no such thing as trust without obedience. There is no such thing as accepting the gifts of God and then not distributing them to the world. Once he calls, we must answer. And once we report to him, he will give us an assignment. And whether or not we hear that assignment and obey that assignment determines our life direction. Young people, you have a decision to make it, whether or not you will be co-missioned by God, whether or not you will accept the mission that God has in the world as your own mission. And this is a choice maybe some of us will make even tonight. And just as I said last night, just as being called reveals something about God, that he loves us, that he wants us, that he empowers us, so being sent reveals something about God, that his heart is not just about loving you, but he actually has a heart for everyone who has yet to hear his voice, who does not know yet that he died to make covenant with them, that he died to destroy their loneliness too. That there are other people out there who are suffering and striving, and he loves them too. And if you have not heard that word, you have not drawn close enough to the God who saved you. He calls you because he loves you, but he sends you because he loves them too. And when he calls, we answer, and we listen, and we hear. And he always says the name of another. The name we hear first is our own. We come to him. But the name we hear second is the name of another. One who suffers. The one who is enslaved. The one who is trapped. The one who has been forgotten. He whispers that name in our ear. You want to know God's purposes in the world? Go to the world's alleys and its trash dumps. Look in its slums and its shanty towns. Look in the shadows of the world, and there you will find the heart of God. There you'll find what he is doing in the world. Look at suffering. Look at the lost. Look at the 1.9 billion children in the developing world. Look at the 640 million children without shelter in this world. That's 1 out of 3. In the developing world. Look at the 400 million with no access to water, safe water. That's 1 in 5 children, no access to safe water. Look at the 270 million children with no access of any kind to health care. Look at the more than 1 million children in Asia, including Thailand, the Philippines, and India, who have been sold into brothels and to street pimps for sexual exploitation. Look at that. Look at the 300,000 to 600,000 of the 2 million prostitutes in the U.S. who are under the age of 18. Look at the 332,000 missionaries that the church has sent into the world, and look at only 4,000 of that 332,000 that have actually been sent to unreached people. That's 2.5 missionaries for every 1 million unreached people. Look at every $1,000 that the church collects in their little silver plates, and how we spend 999 of those dollars on ourselves. You want to know what God's purposes are in the world? Open your eyes. Look at the world you don't want to see. And I'm going to tell you something. I have personally walked in 27 developing nations. I have been there. I have seen the world's overcrowded, rat-infested urban slums. I've been in the garbage dump cities. I've seen the famine-starved rural villages. I've been in the back alley brothels. I've seen the underbelly of the human race. I've seen the parts of the world we deny, we obscure, we try to forget. And always when I'm there, I see Christians there. Someone sent there by Jesus. Always. A defiant tribute to the God who sees and loves what we refuse to see and love, who says, in the words of Isaiah 49, I will not forget you. I have engraved your name upon my hands. Never, when I'm there, and never have I seen Hindus. Never have I seen Muslims. Never have I seen atheists selling all they have, giving all their money, uprooting their families, digging the wells, starting the schools, risking their lives. It's always Jesus' people. Remember what has been forgotten, find who has been abandoned, and there you will find in that place someone who has had God whisper in their ear, these ones. These ones. Answer the God who calls, and you will meet a God who suffers. Every time. And if you will answer this call, young Christian, believe this. You will have your indifference arrested. You will have your carelessness, your carefree approach to life, you will have it dismantled. Elie Wiesel, the Jewish survivor of the Holocaust, the winner of a Nobel Prize, often says that the opposite of love is not hatred, it is indifference. The opposite of love is not hatred, it is indifference. If God were indifferent, He could not love. This is the argument Wiesel makes. And this is made plain in his own story, being in a concentration camp as a young boy. The story he tells about the hanging of 2 Jewish men and a youth at this Nazi concentration camp. All the prisoners, Wiesel included, were paraded before the gallows to witness this horrifying spectacle. And this is what he writes. He says, the men died quickly, but the death throes of the youth lasted for half an hour. Where is God? Where is He? Someone asked behind me. And as the youth still hung there in torment in the noose, and after a long time I heard the man call again, where is God? And I heard a voice in myself answer, where is He? He is here. He is hanging there in the gallows. Any other answer, Wiesel writes, would be blasphemy. Jürgen Moltmann writes, the God who suffers because He wills to love. And Moltmann tells a story when he was 8 years old. He said, I lost my father to cancer and I was weak. And after his burial, I became severely ill, and the pain in my body eventually paralyzed me. I still remember how my mother, newly widowed, cared for me. She did not discuss with me how I felt. Instinctively, she took me into her arms and she caressed my back. And with her gentle hands and reassuring me with words of comfort and love for me, I grew so sick that I was hospitalized. And since we lived in a remote village about 10 miles from the hospital, my mother carried me on her back, walking powerfully uphill and down. And with tears streaming down her cheeks, she would say to me, "Son, Daddy is not here, but Mommy is still here. Hang in there. We'll make it to the hospital soon." This childhood experience, he writes, confirmed for me that a love that does not suffer with the suffering of the beloved is not love at all. What consolation would it have been if my mother had remained aloof from my suffering? Or what help to a wounded people is a God who knows nothing of pain himself? Only the suffering God can help, Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote from his death cell. God helps not through supernatural miracles, but through his own wounds, his suffering with victims, and with who suffers. And guys, I imagine, this is what I see in my mind's eye. I imagine God calling your name, calling out to you wherever you are, and you answer, and you come running, and you say, "Yes, Lord, I'm here. What do you need? What do you want?" And he puts his arm around you. This is what I see in my mind. He puts his arm around you. And in love and with that kind of gentle strength that God has, he looks out with you, like the two of you side by side, and he looks out at the world. And he points to something. Some injustice, some tragedy, some catastrophe, someone somewhere being abused. And he says, "That son, that daughter, do you see that? Do you see that?" And he says, "That has to stop." And you look at it, and then I see you looking over at him, looking just for a moment into his eyes, just kind of catching his eyes on the side, and you see, you think to yourself, what does he mean, and what is he thinking? What does this have to do with me? What am I supposed to do? And you see in that glance, that glimmer in his eyes, is such a potent, almost indistinguishable mixture of fury and sadness in his eyes. And you begin to understand what he's asking of you, what he's saying to you as he points it out. He's saying, that son, daughter, die to stop that. And whatever you were doing before that encounter does not matter anymore. Can we agree on that? You understand, you know now in that moment, looking into his eyes, looking at the problem, looking back at him, seriously, me, that thing, me, and you get it, wouldn't you? You understand, I know what I have to do. You know who you have to live to love. This is what God does. This is what sending means. It means for God to show you a problem and whisper the name of a people in your ear. Again, God doesn't really call us to a profession. That's a misuse of the understanding of vocation. He does not call us to a profession. He calls us to a people. He calls us to a nation. He calls us to a place where He has not yet been glorified, where there is more darkness than there is light. And that the fact that there is a place in this world where there is more darkness than there is light is an offense to God. It is a blasphemy to the Lord of light and love. And the fact that people live in hatred and darkness as slaves and as nobodies, God says, that has to stop. Can you name the people to whom you've been sent? Can you name them? You know the name of the people that He's whispered in your ear. Part of how you can know, just give you a little clue, part of how you can know maybe possibly the problem you're supposed to deal with, the people you've been sent to love and live for, possibly even to die for, is by what makes you angry. And when I say angry, I don't mean angry in some kind of banal, immature sense of the word angry. I mean the kind of anger you get when you know something is wrong and it ought to be made right. A kind of righteous anger, which we see in Jesus, in the life of Jesus. One of my favorite stories, one of the most potent miracles Jesus ever did, is to raise Lazarus from the dead. Do you remember that story? The dude is dead for like 3 days. And Jesus, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but actually what motivates Jesus to raise Lazarus from the dead is anger. He's angry. It's not a very good translation, typically in the kind of the English or the NIV, but this is what it says. It says, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. But if you take that and you really understand the original language, deeply moved in the spirit. See, the translators were uncomfortable with saying Jesus was pissed off. But this is the right way to translate it. He was angry. And he was moved in his spirit. He was so troubled, so upset is the best way maybe to say it. He was upset, so upset by it. He asked this question. So you have to understand, this question comes from that place of anger, that place of torment, that place of trouble. He says, "Where have you laid him?" This is not just a simple inquiry from Jesus. He wants to know, where is he? Show me the dead body. Show me. They say, "Come and see, Lord." And then there is the shortest verse in all of Scripture. Jesus wept. And why does he weep? He weeps from anger. He weeps from the overwhelming emotion. This is not just a sadness in Jesus. This is motivation to act. It is a churning in his soul. And Jesus, once more deeply moved, the word is used again just so John makes it clear what's happening inside him emotionally. Once more deeply moved, Jesus came to the tomb, and it was a cave of stone laid across the entrance. And he says, "Take away the stone." What is it that moves Jesus to bring his friend back from the dead? It is anger. There is a kind of anger that is human anger, that is immature anger, that is masculine anger, that is rooted in cynicism and criticism and superiority, and that produces nothing but more of the same. It's like Hosea says, bloodshed follows bloodshed. I'm not affirming your machismo, manness, your kind of like being pissed off at the world. I'm not affirming that. I'm talking about the kind of anger that comes from a place that comes from rooted in the intimacy of knowing a God that cares about what's right. The best thing in us, not the worst. And in that righteousness, there is a kind of godly anger that confronts evil with good, that does not run from a fight, but confronts evil with good and confronts death with life. What makes you mad? What moves you deeply? What troubles your spirit? Listen, young Christian, if nothing troubles your spirit, you have not drawn close enough. And this possibly could be what he's whispering to you, what he's pointing out to you. See, those people there, they cannot hear me call their name, and I don't like that. You want to know what his purposes are in the world? You want to know that? You want to love those purposes? Really, do you think you can do that? Are you ready for that? Well, then you need to be prepared to get a little angry. You need to be prepared to have your heart broken. You need to be prepared to die. A lot of you heard me tell this story. I just have to do it again. I'm sorry. When I was 13, I think 13 or 14, a friend of mine had a 15-foot Boston whaler. That's a boat. And we would go out on his boat. And one day we were out cruising around, and this other boat kind of was off in the distance with some more kids. And I couldn't really tell. They seemed bigger than us, and there was more of them. There was 3 of us, more of them. But this is the kind of thing I did because I just wrestled with chronic boredom, and so I just started yelling at them like obscenities, or I don't know. I just started like calling out to their boat. And then I realized this may not be a good idea. So I turned to my friend and I said, "Is your boat faster than their boat?" And he looked over at the engine, looked at his engine. I don't know anything about boats. I just asked him, And he's like, "Oh yeah, totally." I was like, "Sweet." So I took something like a cleat, like a metal, one of those things on the boat, and I threw it at their boat. and it hit their boat. And it was like, whoa. And then all of a sudden they were really big, and they got like bigger. And I realized those are like almost men. Those are like man boys, with like beards and stuff. I was like, that might not have been the best idea. I was like, let's see how fast your boat is. So they started coming after us, and we're like in a legitimate boat chase. So he guns it, they gun it, and we're like, going around. And I grew up in St. Petersburg, so we're there in the bay, and they're coming after us, and we're not getting away. Like, we're not putting any distance. So I look at my friend, I was like, hey, dude, I thought you said your boat was faster. He's like, I thought it was. I'm like, this isn't good. He's like, no, it is not good. Anyway, we're going for a while. It's probably 10 minutes of like this boat chase. And then my friend tries to like take this route that he thinks will maybe get us out of it. And all of a sudden, bam, we run ground. It's like all these reeds. And we're like, I reach out, you can like touch the ground on the side of the boat. I'm like, oh my God, we're stuck. And the engine floods, and we're literally like stuck in the ground. And I'm like, let's go, let's get the boat going. And he's like, dude, the engine's toast, we're dead. So there's three of us standing in the boat. They like stop, I don't know, maybe 20 yards out and anchor, hop out, and like literally can walk, like the water's just to their knees. So these five boy men start walking towards us. I'll never forget the silence. We're just sitting in the boat. You think my friends would be like, you jerk, nothing. We're just like silent, just sitting there, waiting like executioner is coming or whatever. We just stood there. We didn't, what do you do? There's nowhere to run. Running definitely like goes through your mind, but what are you going to do? We were like stuck, totally prisoners. So these five dudes come up to our boat. Three of them get in the boat, and then like two of them flank the boat. So then we kind of move they're in the back, what is that, the stern? And we move to the bow, and we're just standing there, the three of us, just like standing there. And they get in the boat, and I just think, man, this is it, this is the end. And then they start conferring with each other what they're going to do to us. So like they're having like a debate. Well, maybe we could do this. And then they're like talking to each other. And we're at the front. You understand? We're as far as we can be from them as possible. But where can we go? And they're talking. And they're big. They're bigger than I expected. And there's five of them. And we weren't tough to begin with. So what was going on here? My mouth writing checks I cannot cash. This is very typical. Anyway, what they decide is they point at me and they point at my friend and they go, you kiss him. So I have a decision to make, right? A basic cost-benefit analysis, Kiss my friend on the lips, by the way, or get the living crap beat out of me. You know what I did? I said, you're going to have to beat me up, man. I said, do what you got to do, man. Do what you got to do. I understand, but that's not happening. Because some things are worse than death. Some things are worse than pain. This is what I discovered in that moment. I didn't think I had it in me. I didn't think I was some martyr. I didn't think I had all this magnanimity inside me to be like, no, I'll take the beating, for my principles or something. But there you are in the throes of it, in the moment, and you say, you know what, I'll take the beating. You want to know how it ended, though? They said, okay, fine, you kiss him. And they did. They kissed each other, the two of them. And that's how we got out of it. We don't retell that story. They don't retell that story. I tell it all the time. They don't retell it. I can't stop telling that story. We got like a funny laugh over there. All right, settle down, settle down. It's real, it's real. This is my point. I always lose control, don't I? The judges on the back panel there, lose control? Yes, I lost control. Yes, okay. Here's the thing, avoiding pain in your life, avoiding pain is not the most important thing that human beings were made to do. Can we agree on that? We were actually designed by God for greatness. We were designed by God for sacrifice. We were designed by God to be like Jesus. And what did Jesus really do in the incarnation if not to show human beings how to be human? We have no models, no examples. We've never done it right. He is the perfect and the ultimate pedagogical gesture from God to teach us, to say, kids, watch me do it. Watch me live. And how does he live? What is the crowning achievement of the life of Jesus? God become man. What is the grand finale? What is the masterpiece of the God who becomes human, who shows us how to be human beings? What is it if not to die for love, if not to sacrifice his own life, if not to bleed for the love of another, if not to hear the Father whisper his name and to say, Son, drink this cup of suffering? And for the Son to return to the Father and say, really, do I have to do that? God, is there no other way? And he says, Son, there is no other way. You have to show them that they're capable of this. And so he says, not my will, but yours be done. And he walks faithfully to a Roman cross to bleed and die and be tortured, to remind us of his love for us and to show us what it means to be great. And if you want to be great in this kingdom that God is setting up, if you want to be great, if you want to be like Jesus, you have to lay down your life for your friends. This is how we know what love is. I was surprised in that moment on that boat at the resolve I had that there actually is more to me as a human being than the fear of loss and an attempt to avoid pain. It's one of the first times I remember noticing that about myself, that I'm capable, if need be, of loss and pain and suffering, if I believe that it's worth it. But let me be clear. I just want to be clear. Following Jesus is going to require suffering from you. But I want to be clear, even though there's risk in it, even though there's risk in following Jesus, even though there's risk in saying yes to what he sends you to do, and even though he will send you to the hurting and to the edges and to the margins, there is risk in saying no to him as well. It's a fascinating concept, a fascinating notion which social scientists have kind of uncovered. It's called risk homeostasis. It means it means that we take a certain amount of risk as human beings. And if we save risk in one area, that is to say, if we can, sort of like you have money, if you can save some risk here, we'll simply consume the risk somewhere else to create a homeostasis in our risk in our life. In other words, if you can save risk in the way you drive, you'll just take more risks in your relationship. If you're cautious in your relationships, you'll take risk in the way you drive. Just that's a simple dualism, but this is sort of the principle at work: risk homeostasis. And trying to live for comfort and trying to protect ourselves from danger and trying to create some kind of middle-class security in our lives doesn't actually produce less risk, because what we do as human beings is we just look for risk somewhere else. We'll spend the risk that we've saved in our spiritual life in stupid things. Some interesting examples. There was an experiment done with taxis in Germany. And what they did is, this is a while back, and so they had taxis that had no anti-lock brakes. And so they had a whole fleet of taxis. And what they did is they brought in some taxis and gave a portion of the taxi fleet anti-lock brakes, and the others, they left with the old kind of locking brakes. And so they wanted to see if the anti-lock brakes, obviously would produce less accidents and would make people more safe. But what they found is curious. What they found instead was that those drivers that had the anti-lock brakes got in more accidents than the drivers with the old cars. Why would that be? Because having the anti-lock brakes gave them a false sense of security. And so they simply consumed that risk, the risk that they had saved by having better brakes. They used the risk up by taking harder turns and driving faster, actually making them, ironically, less safe than if they used a less safe car. Did you know that more pedestrians, you gotta really listen to this, more pedestrians are killed at marked crosswalks than unmarked crosswalks? Got to let it sink in. College. This is college. You're like, oh, God, I have to think. Hold on. Why? How could that be? We make crosswalks to make people safe. Why? How could more people die at marked crosswalks? You know why? Because they think those lines make you safe. You think, well, there's lines there. Let's go. Blam, They think the little white man is making you safe. The white man does not make you safe. Can we disagree on that? Just because the white man says walk. Black people, am I right? You still get hit by a car. Did you know that more children have died from ingesting pharmaceuticals out of pill bottles with a child safety lock than before when there was no child safety lock? I know. Let it sink in. Hold on. More kids have died since the inception of the child safety cap than when there was no child safety cap. Now, how's that possible? It's possible because now people trust the child safety cap. Before, they would be like, these are dangerous. Let's put them in a place that the child cannot get. Now they're like, here's a rattle, Johnny. Play with it. It has a child safety cap. He can't possibly get in it. We consume the risk reduction. In other words, should there be less risk? Sure. But all we do as human beings is we simply consume that risk that we've saved by that innovation or that piece of technology, and we waste it on something else. That's what we do. Sweden I think this is crazy. I think it was like the 70s. Sweden made the switch from driving their cars on the left side of the road to the right side of the road. Can you imagine that week? They're like, okay, let's get the word out. I know we normally drive on this side of the road, but everybody, let's all drive on this side. And they had to make this switch from the left side of the road to the right side of the road. Do you know that year, auto accident fatalities in Sweden went down 17%? This is blow your mind. Well, what happened? What happened in Sweden is what happens in our lives. What happens is that we think, this is, if we take risks, if we move ourselves to the other lane, if we put ourselves in a place we know is dangerous, we're actually more careful, ironically. We drive better. Before it was like, drink and let's go and crash, but now it's like, we're over here. Okay, careful, pay attention. What's going on? What's happening? What's that light? Who's that? Okay, am I on the right side? What's happening? Pay attention, pay attention. Here's the thing I need you to understand. This is what I need you to understand. The status quo, living your life just like everybody else, not taking those risks for God, can be and is more dangerous than some risky rushing into the will and heart of God. And am I going to tell you that there's no danger if you follow Jesus into the trenches, if you follow Jesus to the margins, to the ends of the earth? No, of course there's danger. But here's the thing. If you don't do that, the risk that you save by not following Jesus, you will blow on something stupid. You'll blow it by marrying someone you should not marry. You'll blow it by trying to write an album or be a music star or something like that. You'll blow it on like investing all your money in some scheme that's going to make you rich and you're going to end up bankrupt. You'll take the risk. Listen, you're human. You were made for greatness. You were made to take risk. God designed you that way. Now here's the thing. Don't waste it. Don't waste the risk that's inside you. Don't waste the chances, the danger-loving, the adventure that's inside you on something that doesn't matter. Waste it on God. So you will live for something in this life. You will risk for something. You'll have some vision of the future and you'll live toward it. Maybe it's a vision for yourself. Maybe it's someone else's vision for you. Or it could be God. It's your choice. But you will live for something. You will risk for something. And if it's not the thing that God shows you, if it's not the word, the name, the nation that He whispers in your ear and calls you to engage, then you're just going to take a different kind of risk. And I warn you tonight, young Christian, I warn you that the risk you're taking by saying no to God is a risk of living a life without meaning, a life without impact. You risk something worse than dying. You risk not mattering. You know, in Revelation it talks about the book of life. And I don't know how you have thought about that or were taught that, but there's this idea that there is this book. And one day that book will be opened and its pages will reveal the residence of heaven. That there will be an accounting and a question will be asked, are you in this book? And if you are, you'll move on to eternal life. And if you are not, you'll move on to separation from God. So really, ultimately, at that point of judgment and the nexus between this world and the next, the only question that will matter to us in that moment, in the cracking open of the book of life, is our name in that book. And sometimes we think of it as a record log. Sometimes we think of it as some kind of accounting that just has lists of names. And they'll ask what your last name is. They'll be like, okay, S is me, and they'll try to find you, and they'll see if you're there. I don't think that's what it is at all. What if the book of life is a story? What if it's a novel? What if it's about the work of God in the world and the exploits of God in the world? And the question is still, is your name in the book of life? The question is whether or not you played some part, whether there's a chapter about you in the book of life, whether or not there's a chapter about your chapter in the book of life, whether or not you're just some footnote. And on that day in October at Sonburst, they did actually accept Jesus. There it is, footnote, end of story. That you're in there, but that's it. And that'll be enough, and they'll be like, oh, there you are, yeah. You know, asterisk, 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 asterisk. There you are. I don't know about you, but I want like a section about me. I want a section about my people and my city. I want a section about InterVarsity in Florida. I wanted to say, and then they did this, and then they did that, and then God did this, and then God did that. And there you are, your name is there and there and there and there and there and there and there. Remember when you got your high school yearbook, the first thing you did was look through to find yourself, to see, where am I in here? Where am I in here? And how sad were you when all you saw was just the one page, your name and just your one picture, mandatory, perfunctory picture, Live for God. Be part of His story. If you will, then the hearing of a name that He whispers in your ear is just the beginning of your life, the beginning of the telling of that story. And it's God's story, actually. I urge you not to consume your risk on career or money or personal success. I urge you, I challenge you, I implore you, take risks on God and for the people He's sending you to. I want to wind down, but I want to kind of challenge you. I want to call you guys to something. I've been in a couple of scrapes in my life, a couple of fist fights. I don't know if you have. And there's something, particularly in the beginning of a fight, and if you've never been in a fight, there's this fear of being hit, fear of being struck, especially in the face. It sucks to be hit in the face. You know where I hate to be hit most is my ear. Has anyone ever been hit in the ear? That's just like, you hit my ear. I don't know, it just seems wrong, and it hurts really bad. I'm more than getting hit in the jaw or anything. It's like, my ear. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. I'm just saying that. Here's the thing about being in a fist fight. There's this fear of being struck, and you're afraid until you get hit. And then once you get hit and you sort of take that guy's best shot, you begin to realize, I didn't die. And something happens. Ask boxers. This is what happens. Something happens where you realize, okay, that hurt, but I'm still standing. I can live with that. I can get through that. I can survive that. There's a way that we've lived as Western Christians. We're so afraid to be struck. We're so afraid of pain. We're so afraid of being hit one time that we recoil from the fight. We're not in the fight because we're afraid, totally afraid. And because we're afraid, we don't scuffle, we don't rumble. But all you really need, and I'm just telling you this from experience, all you need is to take one on the chin and realize, hey, I survived that. Let's go. I remember one day, I must have been 7. And there was this street that I lived at the end of, and most of my friends lived on this street, Linwood Avenue. And one day, there was actually 3 houses in a row where kind of my little dudes, my friends all lived, and so I was always there. I was always down there at one of those 3 houses, and my best friend Matt lived in the middle house, and then this kid Chris lived on one side, and then this other kid Chris lived on the other side. We had 2 Chris's, and one was older than the other. So we called the one Chriso, and we called the other one Chris. I don't know why, but Chriso and Chris. And then one day, Chris had come out of his house, and the rest of us were playing. And I saw these boys come like flying on their bicycles. And they just kind of sped on the street. We'd never seen them before. They went right by us. And as Chris was coming out of his house, they jumped off their bikes, like flew off their bikes, jumped on him, and just started wailing on him, just beating him. And I'd never seen anything like it. And we were frozen. And I'm 7 probably. And I could just remember being like frozen with fear and wanting, I guess, deep down to do something maybe, to intervene. I didn't know. I was so shocked. And I just watched my friend just get the tar beat out of him. And they were kicking him, and they were punching him. It's like 3 of them, they're just wailing on my friend. And the 3 of us, we just stood and we just watched. Probably feeling shame, I guess. Paralyzed. I'll never forget. Across the street was this kid named Jimmy. And Jimmy had a dad, and we never talked to his dad because his dad was a little weird and creepy. He was always working on his car, and he never spoke to us. He just grunted, and he was sort of Jimmy's dad. Okay, and he was always like home too much. That guy. Like, your dad ever go anywhere? Does he go to work or anything? No. Okay, and that was like Jimmy's dad. And I never talked to him. We just stayed away from him. We didn't really know him. And I'll never forget, he was there in his driveway. He was probably just sitting there or something. And he comes out and he sees these boys beating up this other little boy. And he just rushed in. And he ran right up to these boys, and he kind of pounded up, and he ran them off. And I'll never forget it, because this is a long time ago. And so he was like even older. And so he said, I'll never forget what he said. He said, "Do you want to rumble?" Like, who says that? You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like now people die of laughter or something like that if you said, "You want to rumble?" But he's like, "You want to rumble?" And those kids were so startled and scared, and they kind of ran away from him. They jumped on their bikes and said, "You better get out of here. You want to rumble?" He kept saying, "You want to rumble?" Watching someone strong stand up for someone weak, someone oppressed, someone who could not defend themselves, it was the most awesome thing I had ever seen in my young life. I was in awe. I can remember standing there just tingling with like an awakening inside me. And I can remember, even being that young, I can remember feeling, going from this incredible sense of powerlessness, and then watching this man who seemed all of a sudden powerful, and I wanted to be him so bad. I thought, I want to be that guy. I want to be like that. And I still do. I want to close, so I want to invite the musicians up. Do you weep for your campus? Stay focused on me. Do you weep for its lostness, for the empty pursuits of the parties and the bedrooms after them, for the lost innocence, for the sexual deviance, for the substance abuse, for the search, the endless, painful search for love and uniqueness, for the intellectual rebellion, for the staggering loneliness of the marginalized student, for the way that pornography is ravaging the souls of a generation of young men and their wives to come, for the spiritual and philosophical lies as the deceived teach the young. And do you realize the staggering dual truth that He alone is powerful? He alone is the one that can do something about that. And that is the one truth on the one hand. And on the other hand, to save and restore, only He can do that. But on the other hand, He has sent you to deliver that power. You have been sent to rumble for someone. And I'm going to ask you tonight, are you willing to get in the fight? Are you willing to see something that troubles you so deeply that you will step in to the ring? In 2010 BC, a Chinese commander named Jing Yu led his troops across the Yangtze River to attack the army of the Qin dynasty. This is one of the most formidable forces of all time. And this Chinese commander goes across this river to face an almost insurmountable foe. Pausing on the banks of the river for the night, his troops awakened in the morning to find, to their horror, all of their ships were burning. So they hurried out of their tents, called to arms, and they grabbed their weapons and they ran to their ships burning, only to find no one was there. There were no attackers, only to find their commander standing among the burning ships. They discovered Zhang Yu himself had set their ships on fire. Because with their ships gone, he had removed the route of retreat for his men. There was only one way, and it was forward. He had left them one option: victory or death. They won 9 battles in a row, ultimately defeating the Qin dynasty. Isaiah 49 says that He has engraved our name on the palms of His hands so that He will not forget. And I think that what He does is He whispers in our ears another name. A name of a people or a place or a corner of campus or a campus itself. And He says to us, you don't forget. You engraved their names on your hands. But guys, the only way that you will see your campus as one is if you ride out with no plan B. And I'm asking you tonight, I'm calling you in the name of all that is holy, in the name of light and love, in the name of the God who saved you, in the name of a God who died on a Roman cross, I call you tonight to burn your ships with me. to think about whatever your plan B is, to think about whatever your way out is, and to say with me, let's not have a plan of retreat. Let's move forward. Let's decide the place that we're called to fight, and let's fight until we win. I'm going to ask you to bow your heads. He is infinitely worthy of all that you have to give. You will never regret the full surrender of your life. And there is a world that waits for love to come. There is darkness that is waiting for light to come. And a God who's waiting to send His kids, the kids that He's loved, the kids that He's made whole, the kids that He's set free to go and do His work, to be warriors in the world, to not be afraid, to suffer, to hang in the gallows if need be. And I'm asking you tonight, will you rise up? Will you step into the fight? Will you let right now the Spirit of God whisper to your name a people? It could be your college. It could be your major. It could be a group of musicians in your music school. It could be the art school itself. It could be the College of Engineering. It could be your family. It could be your hometown. It could be another country far from you now, but it whispered in your ear. And I'm asking you, will you burn your ships with me? Will you step forward into the fight? And will you say, God, I'll go where you send me. No games, no pretense, no show. Just people mobilize their lives in the hands of a dangerous God. Students, I'm asking tonight if you'll stand with me. I'm asking if you'll say yes to that call to burn your ships. If you're sensing yes, you're ready to step into the fight, then I want you to stand to your feet, one at a time across this building. And we're going to commission you. We're going to consecrate you for the work that is ahead. Don't stand if you don't mean it. There's no condemnation. Whatever God is doing, it's okay. But if that's your heart right now, you say, I want to get in the fight. God, use me. Count on me. I want to hear you call me. I don't want a route of retreat. I don't want a plan B. I just want you. You're all I need. You're all I want. I will step into this ring with you. If that's you, I want you to stand up. We will consecrate you tonight. Young people, God made you to fight for Him. He made you to spend your youth on Him. Youth is meant to fight the devil. This is what you're supposed to do. Holy God, righteous God, fire of God, consecrate these young people. Burn in them a resolve. Steal in them a persistence. A people without fear. And God, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, we consecrate them to the work You've called them to. I don't know what it is. I can't say. I'm not you. But you know, and you whisper in their ear. And right now, even as He tells you, this people, will you engrave their names on your hands so that you won't forget?